One.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Objective. And we're going to be talking about the very troublesome situation, which obviously you already know about. Russia has invaded Ukraine, the details of which are a little bit up in the air because it's hard to know exactly what's taking place. But we do see a lot of videos and pictures and tweets and stuff like that, news reports that I suppose we might take with a grain of salt for now. But we're going to be talking about it. We got a couple Americans here to give our perspective. I guess we'll talk about what we know about this situation, how we process it, how we tend to think about these things. And we definitely would like your input. Please comment in the chat room, super chat especially, and let's make this happen. Also, don't forget, God willing. Oh, you believe in God now? That's right. At a time like this, I'm kidding. But, reality permitting, we're going to be in London March 28th, March 29th, March 30th. You get the idea. That whole week leading up to Ayn Rand Con that weekend, and then April 4th, the day after the conference. A lot of ARCUK content coming live to London. So be in London and hit us up via the website link below with any questions you have. All right, enough with my lengthy intros. Let's meet the co-host. This is a guy, you've seen him everywhere. He's all over media, the socials. This guy is just truly Howard Stern's replacement, the new king of media, Mark Pellegrino.
Oh, wow. I can't live up to that, but thank you.
None of us can, but we're going to try. So have you been paying very close attention to the situation?
What does very close attention mean?
Like when you pay attention and then it's like very close.
I've been paying attention. I've been watching the news reports, but I haven't been reading extensively on the business. I haven't been, it hasn't been consuming my every waking hour. Although now that I'm in Paris and a tad closer to the conflict than I was when I was in California, perhaps I should start turning my attention to it a little more.
Yeah, so there's a lot in just what you said now that kind of brings up various issues. So first, just the idea of like, how much should this consume our lives if we're not directly there? On one hand, this is human life we're talking about, which obviously matters to all rational people. Ukraine is on the spectrum of today's countries. Ukraine is a largely civilized and peaceful and enlightened, sort of technologically advanced country, as far as I understand, being attacked by what seems like a much more mystical and imperialistic country, Russia. There's that one respect. Another is that this could become Paris's problem, and this could become Europe's problem, and I don't think anyone's ever going to storm America's shores, but it could become America's problem in various ways. So the question of like, how much should we be thinking about this, I think is a topic for discussion.
Well, it seems to me that it bears a lot of similarities to 1939. I think Putin seems to be animated by similar things to Hitler. He wants to reanimate an empire that's dead. He romanticizes that, wants to start it again. The first steps towards that was probably Crimea, and now it's Ukraine. And it could be, many of the Central and Eastern European powers that were former satellites of the Soviet Union next. Like Razi said, sort of at the top of this, he's probably banking on the fact that the West has annihilated its self-confidence over 75 years of corrosive self-hatred in its philosophy and its historical outlook, and they might not have the confidence, the West in general, to face up to somebody like Putin. I thought I heard somewhere in the news when I was watching the news before I traveled, that he had made some kind of pact with Xi in China, which smacked of the Stalin-Hitler pact in the 30s. That enabled him to, go into Czechoslovakia and Alsace-Lorraine and begin his invasion of Western Europe without having to worry about his Eastern Front. So if that's true, if he did make a deal with China, this could be the thing that he's holding in his back pocket in the hopes that if we start to jump in on this and defend ourselves as a sort of unified world against the bad guys, China's going to come in and throw their weight around too.
Okay. Yeah. Comparing things to World War II obviously is it has a lot of gravitas to it. So, definitely someone like Putin wanting to expand the borders of his country and reunite with a certain family, like an extended family of Slavs, is it basically like Russians / other types of Eastern Europeans?
He needs right. They need living space, just like the Nazis did, and they're using Russian populations in various states as an excuse to liberate these people. It's not unlike what happened in World War II, from what I understand, and it's something that we should have not allowed to get this far. I think when Germany started its occupational movements, it was not strong enough to meet the European powers. Even at the time that Neville Chamberlain surrendered Czechoslovakia to Germany, the European combined effort of the Europeans could have crushed Germany easily. It was after that they began to gain war momentum and began to get more powerful and became much more difficult to deal with. And a guy like Putin needs to be smashed, as libertarian-esque types, or people that defy political description, who have laissez-faire attitude towards the rest of the world. It's a difficult conflict for us to really pinpoint, because I think tyrants who have expansive ideals like he does and is acting on them need to be smacked down hard, so that they never wish to realize those ambitions in the future. But I don't think that we're going to do that, nor do I know that America should yet. I'm still sort of on the fence. Where do you stand?
That's a good question. Really, the question of World War II and America's proper role in it is still an ongoing debate, even among, objectivists. So, I think Ayn Rand thought America should have never gotten involved in World War II. So someone like Yaron Brook sees Nazi Germany as a direct threat to America, and that America should have seen Hitler's expansion as a threat at a certain point. He's not here to give his point of view precisely, but so something I've heard Yaron say, and this I think impacted the way I think of foreign policy, is that until Germany is directly threatening America in World War II, it was not America's job to go over to Europe and stop the Holocaust, right? So a lot of people, like the Dennis Pragers of the world, they act like the purpose of a moral country, or the proper moral foreign policy, is to see where there's injustice and to go stop it. And I've heard Yaron Brook say, he's like, no, if Germany is not threatening America, then individual Americans might decide to send their money or to fly their person over to England and volunteer to fight the Germans if they feel strongly, if they think this is the right thing to do. But there's no justifiable reason for a country like America to spend its treasure and lives to go fight against a country that's not directly threatening the rights of Americans. So in this case as well, it's there's definitely, I think, a good guy and a bad guy. I think Russia is the clear aggressor here. But is it America's problem? I guess the question is, at what point does it become America's problem? It's certainly something for Europeans to really care about. Also, today is not as globalized as the world was in the 30s and 40s. Today, it's the world is very flat, so to speak. If Europe becomes a war zone, that there's a lot of American values at stake. Business interests, various plans, and ways in which
I was going to say that, and even worse, there's policies afoot in America that are making us hyper dependent on these countries for energy, for the lifeblood of our industry. So the fact that the current administration has cut us off from oil production and have made us dependent again on Saudi Arabia and Russia for oil, as opposed to independent, makes the war, if it should happen, a great deal of our business. And it should expose how crazy the people who run our foreign policy are to entrust our energy production in the hands of psychopathic tyrants like the premier of China and this jerk off in Russia.
Right. And when America is dealing with the Middle East, there's also the issue of oil being purchased from the Arab countries. But I mean, in that case, the Arab countries like Saudi had completely nationalized oil refineries and the Iranians, they literally stole American and British and other European property. With the Russians, I don't think that's the situation, but certainly America should not be reliant on an irrational, basically dictatorship or something close to it, right?
Seems to be what's making Germany hesitant is their energy dependency on Russia, and making the rest of Europe hesitant is their energy dependency. And it probably has something to do with our hesitancy as well. But you're right, we're intertwined in such a way that not only with alliances, political alliances, but because of bad policy, that we may have no choice but to fight if he decides to expand beyond Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. So there's sort of an inner conflict I'm seeing. I don't know if it really is a conflict, but it looks like one. On one hand, I don't want to turn into one of these economic isolationists like we're seeing people on the right in recent years advocating for. Like they're saying, like cut off trade with like foreign trade, build everything here, produce everything here, buy American, produce American, and impose tariffs when anyone tries to on imports, right? I don't want to turn into that. I love trade across the planet. I love that. I want that. But also, I don't want to rely on other countries that might become, dictatorial and in many ways, impossible to deal with at any time.
Yeah, I'm not for isolating ourselves economically either, but the energy independence that I was talking about isn't from that nationalist Trumpian point of view, where we think that kind of isolation is of value. It just enables us to be a little bit more independent and certainly trade with every free country you can. But should we be entrusting so much of our production to countries that are nowhere? They're not only don't share our ideology, they are actively working to undermine our ideology, not just our influence in the world. I don't care so much about that, but our ideology. They're trying to, manifest their own world in our world, and it's a dark, scary one, and I don't want it.
Yeah, no, I can't say I do want that. So another sort of aspect of this is the fact that environmentalism is such a strong force in the West. So America has been crippling its own businesses, both at a political level, like the government, obviously, environmentalist laws and stuff, but also probably in recent decades, we've seen companies, what are saying? They're promising to go fully green and wind powered by the year 2050, whatever, like all this bullshit.
Don't you think that's to appease the environmental lobby because they're so strong, to get those people off their backs, those extortionists?
It very well could be that, but also the fact that they need to appease them in that way maybe tells you how powerful those people are. Just like when all these corporations are talking about we pledge to have equity and to hire 40% minorities and all that, like some of them could believe it, like they think this is the right thing to do, but also they need to do this to sort of have any like standing in the community, it seems like. So it's hard to know exactly what the motivation is, but we do know the fact that this is like considered the moral thing to do. So with the environmentalists, it's not that America doesn't produce any energy, right? Like there's a lot of fracking and a lot of drilling happening in America. It's not as bad as one might think, but it's certainly not at capacity. And certainly there's a lot of regulation and a lot of restrictions, and it's difficult to get, all the pipelines and all of the manufacturing that businessmen would like to do, because, and they cite environmental concerns. and as a result, we import from, let's say, Middle Eastern kingdoms and countries that are unfriendly, that, as John McCain once put it, that don't like us very much, and obviously from Russia. So whether they like us or not, I gotta admit, I don't like them very much right now. I don't want to buy anything from Russia until they till they knock it off with the shenanigans.
Yeah, I don't know that that's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
Or maybe the resistance will be stiffer in the Ukraine than he anticipated, and he'll pretend like he'll bring them all to the table in a pretend kind of solution. I don't know. Who knows what's in the head of a crazy tyrant?
That's true. Okay, so the Ukrainians have been resisting. We know that much. The president of Ukraine has been active on social media and on regular media, showing, look, I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. We are not going anywhere. He said, if anyone who, he said, we don't want any war, but anyone who threatens us is going to see our faces, he said, not our backs, our faces. That's very, very gripping language. But also, I mean, let's be honest, Russia is not fighting this war yet as though it's a vital war, right? Like, Russia is not like wiping out cities, and like they are trying to kind of ease their way in and kind of get the Ukrainians to just kind of go cooperate. But if Russia were to really treat this like a serious all-out war, who knows if the Ukrainians would even be there long, like there'd be enough of them for very long to even resist. So in a way, this is not all out war yet. I mean, we don't really know if Russia is going to turn this into a serious balls to the wall.
But I think most countries since Korea have been about pricking the bear as far as you can, right? Just push them as far as you can, declare enough war and produce enough war that you get everybody agitated, but not so much that they actually do anything about it. And it seems like that's been the nature of war in our lifetime, in my lifetime at least. We're so terrified of the concept of all-out war. We're so terrified of what happened in Dresden and Tokyo and Hiroshima and Nagasaki that, the moralists who claim that those were terrible things to do in the face of what the Nazis and the imperialist Japanese did, have won the moral argument. So now everything's piecemeal, and you never quite engage in a war. You can't quite call it what it is, so you can't quite defend yourself either, or come to the aid of those who seem to need you.
Right. America and Western countries, we don't really fight to win, but the fact that Russia thus far seems to be treating Ukraine with those same sort of almost kid gloves, which I hate to say because it is devastating to see even just this much aggression being unleashed on Ukraine, and to see even just a few bombs and even one death, let alone hundreds.
Didn't Biden say, if it's a minor incursion, we won't do anything? I don't know when that threshold is reached, when minor incursion becomes a major incursion, but perhaps Putin is testing that, pushing the excursion just a little further each time, but not enough to become the type of excursion that would bring the European powers and America into it.
Yeah, he might be starting off like fighting Western style, right? Like modern Western style, very, very reluctant, or targeted, coming off, and then over time increasing it. And that's a very troubling time. Super chat from Marilyn, $4. Thank you. And then Marilyn again with $5 says the Green Movement helps Putin. Doing more fracking and drilling in the US would hurt him. And then with $5, Marilyn says the president of Ukraine has agreed to talk with Putin. He should tell Putin to blank off. That's not the kind of language we're going to say here on this family show, but yes. Well,
I guess if it were Trump, he would say something like that.
If
Trump were to go over there and talk to Putin, there would be that kind of language, but it would also be coupled with, some obsequious ass kissing.
Yeah. I mean, I think you mean Trump uses that kind of language in general, but not usually with Putin. In fact, they've tended to get along famously, which raises what I perceive to be kind of a split among people on the right lately. So, the conservatives, or the new type of conservatives we've seen in recent years, ironically, they're new, so they're not very conservative, but this sort of new right that we've seen in recent years with Trump as their sort of figurehead, they've been very pro-Putin, right? They like powerful, strong men, and they've generally liked Putin. But now, actually, when Putin is actually taking the action that he is with Ukraine, you see a lot of people in general really not liking Putin. The whole world is against him, including many American conservatives and right-wingers, Republicans. But there's still a significant number of Republicans of this new right variety that are like, what? Like, this is what we wanted. Yeah, Putin's our guy. Of course, go in there, reunite with your relatives, right? This is the way, right? This is destiny. So this could actually create a serious sort of crack, a serious sort of rift, a serious split in this new right. And who knows? It could actually destroy. This is wishful thinking on my part. This could actually sort of maybe help get rid of this freak show that Trump brought to Republicans and move them back in a direction of, individual rights and capitalism, imperfect as they always were at advocating for that.
Unfortunately, I think we have to wait till his 2024 bid for that to happen.
Yeah. So whether he runs or not, I think is still up in the air.
I thought he announced that he was going to do it. He was intending on doing it.
Oh, well, I didn't hear the exact announcement, so I guess I considered it a rumor until now. But whether he gets the nomination,
maybe I just dreamed that. I did have a nightmare last night.
Yeah, eating cheese before bed, is that a thing? You eat pizza, you eat cheese, and it gives you nightmares. I've heard that.
Yes,
must be that Parisian cheese I've heard about. So yeah. So if Trump runs this time around, obviously he's got a lot of baggage. The guy who was impeached twice, the guy with the January 6th Capitol storming attached to him, whether or not people blame him for that, it's certainly affiliated with him in the minds of many voters. He's a guy with a lot of baggage. And now add to that, he's the guy who expressed admiration for Putin for many years. And now Putin has turned out to be public enemy number one. So I'm curious to see, does Trump still represent the same type of force on the right that he used to? It'll be interesting to see.
I think unbelievably, there are people who are just wedded to this guy no matter what he does. He did say he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and people would still love him. And unfortunately, he's right. I've talked to some of these folks. They are immovable.
Yeah. Some of them consider themselves objectivists, but even some of those guys with this whole Putin shenanigan, it's really getting people, it's pushing people into a corner where they really need to think and decide, like, do I really stand with this circus that has emerged on the right in recent years? Do I really stand by Trump and all of his BS? So yeah, I know people say, well, if Trump were in office, Putin wouldn't be invading Ukraine. Could be true, could be wrong. I don't know. But I do know that Trump is the guy who expressed admiration for Putin for all these years and definitely influenced Republicans to admire guys like Putin in recent years. So
we get it coming or going. The left admired Castro and Stalin, and they love Mao. I think Hillary Clinton had Mao's his little red book, in her breast pocket, like a Bible. And all of our political classmen love tyrants. So to me it's old news. So Trump's just like them.
Yeah, well, he's a former Democrat, which is sort of the story of Republicans, right? Like, what there's got to be a joke in there somewhere. Like, what do you call a Republican? Last year's Democrat. I don't know, there's something, right? Like,
true. Michael Medved was one. He wrote a book called Right Turns. Dennis Prager was a Democrat way back when. He turned conservative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that disqualifies somebody. We all came from somewhere, right? At one point, you and me were probably much farther to the left than we were once we discovered a better philosophy. Yaron Brook grew up a socialist. Peikoff might have. He was so young when he met Rand, so who knows if he had any political view before that. But so many.
Canada, so it might have been in his blood.
I mean, yeah, slash dangerous to use that kind of language these days when we've got, the new Hitler invading Ukraine. But certainly, if Peikoff was growing up a Reformed Jew in Canada, I would imagine the politics in his household were definitely mixed economy and leftward. So yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with people evolving and learning and changing, but sans a serious philosophical overhaul, they end up bringing a lot of their premises with them. And to the point where, like, yeah, Republicans have become like, yeah, very anti-war, sort of, or should I say pacifist when it comes to foreign policy, yet paradoxically very cozy with creeps like Putin. So, I mean, yeah, we're all Democrats now, so to speak, it seems like. But there is still a fairly recent memory of Republicans speaking about the principles of individual rights, right? Speaking about capitalism and free market, solutions, as they would put it. So we might see a return to that. It's wishful thinking, but
when did you hear that? I mean, I hear it, but it's mixed in with nationalist, globalist, nonsensical rhetoric. So it's hard to tell. It's hard to take them seriously when they talk about liberty and markets anymore.
Well, anymore, I don't hear it very much anymore. But 10 years ago, with like the whole Tea Party movement, I mean, generally, before that, I mean, Ronald Reagan, all right. I mean, generally, Republicans have been the ones to at least pay lip service to the founding fathers. And the way I see it, like the Trump Republicans are the ones who like explicitly reject the founding principles. Like they kind of snub the whole thing. They laugh at it. And again, these are like basically former Democrats, former lefties who are very, very cynical about the, any glamour, any grandeur that the founders of America have. So that's kind of how I think of it. But I'm sort of hoping that, imperfect as it might be, maybe there'll be kind of a return on the right to America's founding principles, at least in rhetoric. But it'll be so, I mean, talk about having no reputation left. I mean, Jesus Christ. Do you know who Mark Levin is?
Yeah.
So, I mean, he was always the anti-Trump guy. He was a never Trumper. He hated this whole protectionist view. He was for a religious conservative, he was like as good as you could hope for when it came to economics and stuff like that. And he would speak about individual rights and stuff like that. I mean, under Trump, he became like, all he'll talk about is just, I'll beat the Democrats, beat the left. So he'll completely turn a blind eye to the freak show of the right. And now in the last week or so, with CPAC going on, now Mark Levin is starting to kind of talk about, oh, we need to get rid of populism. Populism is Marxism. Like suddenly now Mark Levin is trying to be Mr. Liberty, Mr. Individual Rights. But I mean, yeah, talk about your reputation, like just completely being in the trash. Can you imagine if you and me behaved that way? Like how quickly would the people watching us here like call us out on that and completely call us disingenuous?
I mean, that's why I don't believe in some people think that you ally yourself with the enemy of your enemy, and that somehow progresses you a little bit further along the road that you want to travel down. But it doesn't. It tarnishes your reputation. It tarnishes the purity of your ideology, your values completely, and makes you an incredible. Is that a right term? You're not credible anymore as a moral being if you compromise your values to get ahead a little bit. So they're wrong. You don't ally yourself with Trump because you think he's going to beat the left now. You're losing down the road. You may win the battle here, but you're going to lose the war.
Yeah, and increasingly we see us losing the battle here, or us meaning, I don't know, I guess even just Republicans, they're increasingly losing at what they want to achieve, or they just switch sides altogether. So like, since when are Republicans so pro Russia, right? Wasn't it? I thought like we were very apprehensive about these commie pinkos, right? But suddenly Republicans are into it. So,
well, thank God I haven't seen any of this stuff. So you're hip to this new strange nationalist demon child that Trump gave birth to, that's embracing Russia, because as far as I know, the Republicans have been anti-communist and anti-Russian from, I don't know, the 30s.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it just in recent years, like I said, because Trump is he was very friendly with Putin and expressed admiration for him. You saw Republicans in general being very cozy with that, and just generally cozy with dictators and strongmen. You know, Tucker Carlson admires the guy from Austria, whoever's in charge over there. I don't know if he's a complete dictator, but he's certainly not not a humble public servant. He's not a lower D Democrat or anything like that. He's
Carlson is sometimes indistinguishable from a hard lefty to me economically. It
yeah.
sounds like he's talking from Marx's economic playbook half the time.
I agree. And this, I think, speaks to the pattern of, like today's right wingers are basically just yesterday's left wingers in many cases. As the left picks their new battles, now the left are all about identity politics, like, the oppressor versus the oppressed. And you see the right wingers picking up the economic Marxism, nationalism, which was a progressive advent. I mean, they go through a conservative. They drive to a liberal, a leftist house, opens their trash can on trash day, goes through it, and those are their new
they open the trash can 30 years later and they pick up that trash and they do that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess in conclusion today, we continue to live our lives, right? As you can see by this fun show we're hosting here, we continue to live. We don't renounce our values. We don't, I mean, even if this does become our problem directly, even if this does become a world war that affects us, all of us, as much as we can, we're going to live and enjoy life. I guess that's sort of the answer that the episode began with, of like how to deal with all this.
Yes, it did. You're right. And that's what will happen. But I do want to know what your point of view is. Do you think we should be involved?
Like militarily?
Yeah.
For whatever my opinion is worth, I would say not now. But maybe selling the Ukrainians weapons or giving them weapons and then maybe later asking them to pay back, however that works, however the best way it is to do that. But like, yeah, definitely morally, I think there is a value in a powerful country lending its moral sanction to the better of the two. But I mean, same thing with, Israel versus the Palestinians. I don't think America should be funding Israel, but the moral sanction, like the moral identification that these are the good guys defending themselves from these guys. And if Israel needs to buy weapons, sell it to them. So yeah, that's how I tend to think of it.
We're in agreement.
All right. That's what I like to hear. All right. Coming up today at 8 p.m. UK time, it's Reverse Engineering Happiness with Tal Tzfani and Amanda Maxim. Then at 9 p.m. UK time, it's HBTV with Harry Binswanger, and he'll be discussing property rights. So bring your questions, folks, and have fun. All right, Mark, thanks. I guess we can jump over to Clubhouse if you got a few minutes in you.
I'm actually I have to jet, but I'll check in for a few minutes just to see how you're doing.
Can't imagine Paris is more enticing than getting on Clubhouse with us. But yeah, all right, a few minutes at least. See you all on Clubhouse and back tomorrow for the Daily Objective. Thank you and goodbye.